Howdy, guys, gals, and non binary pals. This is the Tales from the Waystone Summer Reading Program.
We are your hosts, Will and Phoenix. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the first installment of our series on Travis Baldree's Bookshops and Bonedust. Take a look, it's in a book, where we'll be reading the prologue through chapter 5.
All right, so to preface this a little bit, about a year ago, we went off to our favorite little hotel in Newport, Oregon, overlooking the ocean, all book themed. We knew it was on the brink of being either sold or had just been sold to a new owner who was planning to shut it for a little bit and revamp everything. And so we wanted to get just a little taste of that old magic contained in this over 100-year-old building that kind of sways in a storm, that had uneven floors, that had places to read, that had a no cell phones in public spaces policy. And so we took a bunch of books, including Bookshops and Bonedust for Will, and it kind of jump-started a resurgence back into being voracious readers, which is something that we'd love to talk to you about after disclaimers. Before I started in on disclaimers, I do want to say I recently had to have a root canal redone. 25 years is a good long run, but it needed to get revisited, so my mouth hurts. And then Will is just getting over a cold, which is why his voice might be a little bit lower.
Yeah, a little froggy.
There's a little frog in your throat?
Yeah, a little bit.
You ate Kermit?
Hi ho, Kermit the Frog here.
Oh god, you ate Kermit.
No, I just talk like him.
Okay, anyway, so Will ate Kermit, and so he sounds a little froggy. And this might be a shorter episode, but that's okay. Just to go ahead and give you all the disclaimers, each week we'll be examining a section of Bookshops and Bonedust and figuring out what we can take from the text and apply to our real lives. We will also take some time to focus on something that we have learned this week, and then we will share a recommended thing of the week. Finally, we'll wrap things up with... I almost said the old one. Finally, we will wrap things up with notable quotables from the book that made us smile or think or laugh, which I think this is in the wrong order, but I don't care. I'm reading it. Oh, also, one last thing. Will might be breathing through his mouth more, and if I miss some of that in the edit, sorry. Before we begin, let's get some disclaimers out of the way. First of all, we are in no way affiliated with Travis Baldree or his publisher, Tor Books. Second of all, our discussions naturally assume that you have read through chapter 5 of Bookshops and Bonedust. That is not what this says, but whatever. It just says through 5. Oops. If you haven't, pause this podcast right now and go ahead and read it. It's okay. We'll wait. You're back? Cool. So either you've read the passage or you don't care about spoilers. Also, a word to our community. Please be kind to yourselves, one another, and the creators of the worlds that we love exploring. Also, not just the most perfect timing because it's starting to get blustery and windy and rainy and gross outside, which is, I think, the perfect time for a cozy read. But there is yet another in this series coming out around the time that this episode comes out, and we did not plan it that way. We 100% gave full control of which of the 3 books we were considering to our Discord, and they chose Bookshops and Bonedust.
All right, so this is the prequel to Legends and Lattes, and it follows Viv at the beginning of her adventuring career before the idea of becoming a coffee shop proprietor was even a glimmer in her eye. This is where I think her love of the cozy starts, and it also sees her have a bit of an awakening as a reader, which I found also mirrored our own sort of reawakening as readers as well.
I know when I was a kid, and when I say a kid, I mean a teenager, it was really a huge part of my identity. I loved being the person who carried around a book that was thicker than my wrist. I would devote so much of, like, how much weight can my backpack hold to things like the Wheel of Time or, unfortunately, the Sword of Truth novels. Looking back at that, I'm like, You know, I loved having just hours of entertainment in a small-ish package, and I would stuff my nose right back into a book at every opportunity. I carried it with me to like glasses appointments or to anything where I would be waiting for anywhere more than 5 minutes. I'd read on the bus, I'd read between classes. And I devoured books like that a lot. I'm dyslexic and it takes a long time for me to read, but I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, I was the kid who always brought a stack of books with him on family vacations.
And got made fun of for it.
Yeah, like we'd be all on these long family road trips or whatever, and I'd spend the entire time with my nose in a book. And then when we got where we were going, the first thing we'd do once we set up was I'd open the book back up and get back to reading.
Going camping, book.
Yep. Vacations for me were all about finding new and interesting places to go read a book. And that's kind of carried over into our adult life as well.
Like our favorite hotel, which we do need to go back now that the new owners have revamped it and see what it's like. It looks different, but it still looks cozy. And I'm just excited to learn about what the new thing is.
Me too. So, yeah, when I picked this book up a little over a year ago, I was coming off of a period where I had kind of taken a lull in pleasure reading. Most of my reading was either for the podcast or for work. And in the meantime, we ended up finding that a lot of our spare time was being taken up by just mindlessly scrolling on YouTube or social media.
I mean, I still mindlessly scroll on YouTube, but social media I've pared down to just Reddit.
The point I'm getting at is we had a lot of time sinks that didn't necessarily yield a return on value to them. And so when we went out to the Sylvia Beach Hotel, I had this book and Legends and Lattes both.
I think you had other books too.
I had a couple others as well, yep. And I remember we had Starter Villain, that's what I had.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah. Such a good book.
Yeah.
Was our previous book.
So yeah, I had them in my backpack and I devoured them all, just one after the other.
I didn't hand you the Inheritance trilogy quite yet. I don't think I'd finished it.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But that's the one that I went through is N.K. Jemisin's Inheritance trilogy.
Point I'm getting at though is on this trip, we both kind of just were able to sit down and reset and give ourselves the time and focus to unplug and just read for pleasure up in the cozy attic area of the Sylvia Beach Hotel, overlooking a stormy bay as the wind rocked the 100-year-old building. So having that as sort of the foundation point of this, I think Bookshops and Bonedust in particular really fits that particular setting. It also takes place in a seaside town, and it also concerns the discovery of the joy of reading.
Which is something that I noticed and which sparked my want for this conversation. So we both identified as readers and we both kind of had dropped off of that. Like, I always had a book, but I wasn't getting through them. I wasn't reading multiple books a month. Like, I'd go through fits and starts of audiobooks, which is absolutely reading books. Not even a hot take, it just is consuming books. But I kind of vacillated from that to Critical Role to other very long form essays on YouTube, and it wasn't consistent. And it's really hard to go to bed with an audiobook because I fall asleep and it keeps going. So I'd have to wait until I had something to do with my hands, like crochet, when I was in a mood to do that and sit down and listen to an audiobook. So yeah, I went through audiobooks, but I didn't really get that reading. And we set up so many places in our home to just be reading spaces. I have a lovely little rocking chair that I do use for reading now. And we have a comfy couch downstairs that is big enough for the two of us to just cuddle up in front of the fireplace and get our noses in a book. And we'd lived here for a couple of years and we didn't make use of them in the way that we had planned. So we both wanted that. Identify as readers, weren't reading. Viv is kind of the opposite. She doesn't identify as a reader. In fact, she actually tells the proprietor of the local bookstore that she's not much of a reader. And I know that there are some people who identify that way as well, that are like, but I'm not really a reader, but I kind of want to. And I think in those instances, it's really about finding a book that grabs you and doesn't let go. And everybody's book that does that is different. And yeah, I'm going to admit that right now my current book is a bit of a, not really a hate read. Not really. I just consumed almost everything that John Scalzi has written. And first book not by John Scalzi that I've read for pleasure isn't written very well, and I'm not going to put them on blast, so I'm not going to really like tell everybody what it was. But it's got a good plot idea and a good hook and terrible writing. Like, the stickler for grammar that I am, this is hurting my soul a little bit. And there's a whole lot of tell don't show happening and whatnot, but like I'm still going to make it through this book. And so I think that that's also something that is absolutely valid. But you know what? Sometimes you just have to find the thing that won't let go, that you keep thinking about, that just propels you through the story. And it is absolutely 100% okay to DNF things.
Yep. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into this story, okay?
Yep.
So we begin with the prologue, and also actually, even before the prologue, we begin with the most important thing in a fantasy novel,
The
a map. Yes. It's a classic trope of every good fantasy novel going back to Tolkien.
And some really awful ones.
Yeah, that too. But yeah, start off with a map.
My current book included.
So we start in the middle of a battle. We see Viv basically doing her best Gimli at Helm's Deep impression, just counting the number of animated skeletons that she gets to kill.
I will say this before we get too much further. If you really, really, really want to know what the book is that I'm reading, message me on Discord or just like ask in one of the channels.
So Viv is going to town and just killing a whole bunch of skeletons.
So, question for you. Have you either been in a TTRPG or playing through a video game where you are kind of playing golf with skeleton heads?
Yeah, it's usually like the tutorial level where you're maybe a little overpowered for things.
And you're just like thwack, 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 or you play a barbarian or a fighter or something in D&D where you just go, and now I have this thing that I can do. And now I have like second wind. And then now I have this other thing. And now I can action surge. Now I can do this. And I'm sorry, I know my turn is taking forever, but I am going to thwack, 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 thwack my way through everything.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that. And then I'm going to whirlwind attack. And then I'm going to just take all of these attacks, and I don't need to worry about anything. I'm basically invincible. None of these guys can touch me. Yeah, sure, I'm outnumbered, 20 or 30 to 1, but I'll be fine.
They all have 1 hit point.
Yeah.
My weapon does 5.
Yeah. So Viv, at this point in her career, has just started out with Rackham's Ravens, which is a band of mercenary adventurers on the quest to take down a necromancer named Vitrine.
And like a lot of young, impulsive, chompy adventurers, she also thinks she's invincible. And then a skeleton wight gets a opportunity attack on her and stabs her through the thigh.
I mean, they only have to do it once.
And it brings her to a halt. Meanwhile, like, her entire troop is going, no, wait.
This is why you never split the party.
Like, they're all much more
seasoned.
That's a good word for it. Experienced is what I was thinking.
Yeah, they are maybe moving a little bit slower, but more methodically and more cohesively.
And I'll say this. It's the same advice that you get for learning a new song on your instrument. Take it slow initially and then speed up.
And so as Viv is waiting for the killing blow to come down on her, the rest of the party catches up to her, drives off the rest of the skeletons,
and moves on without her.
And once they're done with that, Rackham himself comes back and has a fairly honest assessment of Viv's current performance.
Little heart to heart, you're too impulsive. You're going to get killed. We're going to drop you off at the nearest town and you're going to heal up. If you feel up to it and haven't, decided to just give this all up, we'll take you back when we come back. I don't want to necessarily blow by blow this because I think that this is a lovely story that needs to be experienced by our readers. Also, you have cold and are making weird noises. I have a mouth that hurties. So we are going to kind of truncate through the opening. It's mostly scene setting. It's world building. It's introducing us to the idea that Viv is one of those people who does not like to sit still.
And she is also someone who defines herself purely by her physical strength.
I just went through a surgery where it is very deceptive. I felt fine the entire time. And I had you may not lift, push, or pull more than 10 pounds for over a month. Don't bend over too much. Don't do a whole lot of movement. Don't go too fast. Let your body heal. And it made me crazy. I don't like to sit still. I don't like to not have a project. So I had a lot of projects. I had crochet projects. I had painting projects. We still did our D&D nights, Daggerheart now. I'd get up and I'd putter. I made sure that I was taking care of the cat, even though I couldn't lift him. I still picked up my lightest guitar and tried to learn things. But for someone who everything about her is very much about her physical prowess, her physical strength, her ability to move gracefully and or just effectively, having a major limb out of commission for who knows how long was torture. And immediately her idea is, oh, well, now I'm awake. She's been out of it for a few days. But now that she's awake, she's like, I'm going to get back to it. Sure, I'll take it easy. Her version of taking it easy is not taking it easy, as predicted. Like, that's not something that any normal person would go, oh yeah, you're definitely taking it easy. And to top it off, she's also in a place that doesn't have a whole lot going on.
Yeah, this is not Thune, which was the big city in Legends and Lattes. This is a tiny little coastal village that's mostly subsisting on fishing and the occasional tourists.
Much like the Oregon coast.
Yeah, like I say, perfect for a weekend on the coast read.
Specifically in winter.
Yeah. It's wet, it's rainy, it's windy, it's blustery, and
also the footing is unstable because of sand. And if you've never been to a coastal town on a salty body of water, just know that even if you replaced the deck this year, you could easily step through it next year.
Yeah, everything is moist.
Moist and windy and sandy, so you're basically sandblasting everything constantly. And then if it's not raining and the sun is beating down, it's reflecting. So it's intensifying the effects of the sun, the bleaching and whatever, and the degrading.
There's a lot of temperature change as well to throw into it, so you get warping as a result of that.
Don't leave a guitar out of its case if you live on the coast.
No. Point being, Viv is kind of in the middle of nowhere. And as someone who's basically made her living by her sword at this point, she doesn't have any enemies to fight. Like, her big challenge is not something that can be resolved with her sword. It's, how do I rest up? How do I keep my mind active? How do I keep from just getting bored?
Her job is to heal, but healing's boring.
So we meet a few of the important people around the town here in these first couple chapters. First, we meet Brand, who is the proprietor of the inn where she's staying, the Perch. He's basically a sea elf and is, among other things, a very good, hearty cook.
The Perch should let you know that it's high above.
Or a fish.
That too. But it's also like on one of the little hill peaks.
Probably to protect it from the waves.
But not the wind. But it also means that it's the high point of the town, which means, like, if you leave it, if you want to go back to it, you have to go uphill. And I don't know if anyone's tried to do that on crutches.
Not fun.
No.
Everything's built vertically there.
Narrow, crowded, cramped, and Viv is an orc.
So she's bigger than just about everybody.
So first we've got Brand, and then we've got
Then we've got Pitts, who is another orc who is kind of the village handyman. When we first meet him, he's kind of a taciturn guy, just hauling stuff around in his wheelbarrow. Looks like working on various repairs.
Man of Few Words.
I think he fills a similar role to Calamity in the first book.
Otherwise known as Cal.
And then we have Fern, who is the proprietor of Thistlebar Booksellers, which is a fairly old and run down used bookstore. And at this point, really, she's making more money selling sea charts and the like to the various boats that come through town.
As she describes it, the money coming in from that is like buoy water being thrown out.
Yeah, it's not a whole lot.
And so her debts are almost certainly more than her income. A lot of the little shops have already closed. There's not a lot to do. The only thing that looks like it's thriving is the bakery.
And that's where we meet Maylee, who is a dwarven baker who makes the finest lassie buns, which I think are kind of like molasses cinnamon rolls.
I doubt that they're cinnamon rolls, but like buns. Almost kind of like what we had earlier, but probably not as dumpling-like.
That could be.
They're probably like rolls, but with stuff in them.
Yeah.
We forgot, I think, to note that Fern is a raccoon.
Much like Thimble. Although, unlike Thimble, who is incredibly quiet and shy, Fern is foul-mouthed and
Boisterous.
yeah, very quick to speak her mind and open about her thoughts. At first, Fern and Viv are a little hostile to one another.
I don't know that I'd call them hostile. I think what happened is, so like Viv did go into the bookstore after having accidentally busted one of the boards outside the bookstore on the boardwalk. Again, everything degrades very, very fast. And then Viv is responsible for knocking over precarious stacks of books and also riling up, it's not a dog, but it takes the place of a dog, Pot Roast.
So pot roast is a grifflet, which is basically like, so you take a griffin, and instead of having the back of a lion, it's a pug. And instead of having an eagle in the front, it's an owl.
Sounds adorable.
And pot roast mostly is, but also kind of an unholy terror.
And also not very fond of Viv right now.
I mean, Viv did bust into pot roast's home and knock
stuff
stuff over. So
Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
I owe you many.
To be honest, you've never got back up after our first trip to Newport.
It was even before that.
Yeah, but that cemented it. That was like 15 years ago.
Yeah. At any rate, Viv is kind of barging in, making a mess of things, and kind of skeptical of the value of everything in here too. Remember, at this point, Viv doesn't view herself as a reader.
However, Fern is of the opinion that to make it up to her, because like this isn't just that it kind of annoyed Pot Roast, it also kind of distressed Fern, that Viv can buy a book, and Viv has left her wallet at the hotel.
All the way at the top of the hill.
And she's on a really uncomfortable crutch. So instead, Fern gives her a book and says, come back tomorrow. We'll settle up payment then. Just whatever. I'm, again, not going to blow by blow this. The short end of what happens is that Viv sits down as it's stormy and gross outside for over a day and just devours the book. Turns out Fern has absolutely chosen one that does that thing that says, you can't put me down. Viv falls asleep reading the book. She wakes up, wants to read the book, spends the entire next day or so just reading or wanting to pick it up and read again to get the magic back from that one story. replays it in her head. It does not let go. She's also then confronted by the surgeon who she has tried to throttle. Short end of that story. He gives her something that makes her think her leg is on fire, but it does actually help and allows her to have more mobility going forward. She didn't come back the next day, but she does come back the next day to settle up everything with Fern, who's like, how was the book? How you getting on with it? Finished it. Oh, really?
And I'd like to actually point out something that I found really fascinating about this, and I think that really speaks about the joy of books. Two people can read the same book and have different impressions of it, and both of those are equally valid.
Yes.
So, like, this book is basically a pirate story about this pirate queen, and her name is Madger, and then she has her lover, Lagan, and they kind of seem to complete each other, but seemingly Lagan betrays Madger, and Viv is like, but man, he really betrayed her. And Fern actually has a different interpretation. No, Lagan didn't betray Madger. Lagan acted so that Madger could be the version of herself that she wanted to be, to prevent her from losing the part of her that he loved. And they still ended up losing one another. So where Viv has one reading of it, Fern has a different one, maybe a little deeper one. And books can contain layers like that.
I'm going to bring up that someone was looking for sci-fi that had a more left view politically, because a lot of, like, especially military sci-fi has a very right politically leaning view. And I mentioned Scalzi. And then, that was a couple months ago that I mentioned that. And somebody just piped up, I don't think it's very political. And I'm like, what? I am of the opinion that everything is political. Not everything is partisan, but everything is political, because we kind of make it that way. But I'm also of the opinion that if you actually bother to read it and read it critically, most of Scalzi's work could be viewed as very left-leaning. Even the things that are silly or derpy or weird. And so, like, even the ones that I think are just inherently comedic, especially kaiju, but Starter Villain, which we just finished up, the main protagonist is very pro-union, to the point where he's like, my employees should definitely form a union, even if it screws me a little bit. That's a thing that I think points you in a very specific partisan direction. The way that the character is in that, like, our main character, Charlie, in that book, is very left-leaning. And I think that unless you are just going to let the story wash over you, which is fine, and only focus on the funny bits, which is also fine, you can't really miss it.
I mean, there are people who listen to Rage Against the Machines just for the killer guitar riffs and the chonky beats. And that's cool. It does have those. Those are real, but it's also incredibly political. So, yeah.
Right. There's a lot of things where Star Trek, when did Star Trek become so woke? Dude, in the 1960s. It's always been that way. How you miss this thing? But I don't know. I just think that it's an interesting thing to see the different perspectives. But it's also a really interesting thing to be open to hearing that. And to maybe let it sway your view, or not, but to respect the other person for having a view that is different than yours.
You can read stuff by people all across the political landscape. They can be more conservative than you. They can be more progressive than you. That's okay. But you still have to at least understand what sort of view is being espoused to be able to actually think about it critically.
I, in some ways, agree with the whole death of the author thing, that the intent of the author no longer really matters to your own interpretation once it's been put out in the world, right? Unless, and this is a big unless, you get it absolutely opposite wrong.
Yeah, there are some crazy banana pants wrong interpretations of just about anything.
That's the line that I draw at it. It's literally the thing that I put up with Star Trek, right? Star Trek is inherently anti-racist, anti-speciesist, anti-capitalist even. It is specifically that. It is very specifically comes from that. And if your take is that it is absolutely not that, then you're wrong. You can look at it and go, hey, I have different views from that, but I still enjoy the storytelling. That's not a wrong way to enjoy it. I'm just saying that interpreting it as pro militaristic, right leaning anything, the point has sailed over your head.
And I can see where, from certain perspectives, that can work. Like, especially if you've only been watching episodes that deal with things like space battles, where it's all about these clash of military forces, and you've really only thought about it in about Starfleet as a military organization, which, as the series goes on, in many ways, it's very easy to see that. Like, if all you've ever watched is Deep Space Nine, especially the latter seasons, which are exclusively about, or almost exclusively about, a massive galactic military conflict, it could be very easy to view everything through that lens. And it is that, but it's also more. There are other deeper critiques to be made, specifically about, the military nature of Starfleet, which exists in tension with the rest of it. Like, the militarism that we see in Deep Space Nine is not something that the show is explicitly for.
It's not explicitly celebrating.
It is something that the characters approach with a degree of ambivalence that you wouldn't necessarily expect from a more straightforward space opera.
Heck, Old Man's War. The first book started off as pretty much a tribute to Starship Troopers, which in itself is a critique. And as it goes further on, the characters that you get the perspective of are very clearly skeptical or critical of the military might of the colonial union.
And in Old Man's War, the characters begin to express serious reservations about both the military aspect of the colonial defense forces and the very civilian project of the colonial union itself. And they start to question their role in it. It starts off kind of like a kind of propagandistic almost approach to things, celebrating soldiers for their sacrifice, et cetera, et cetera.
Look to your left, look to your right. Both of these people will be dead by the time that a year has passed.
Right. At first you're kind of thinking, oh, that sounds like kind of an odd thing, it's a sweet deal maybe for people who otherwise wouldn't have a chance at all.
No,
Well,
no, it doesn't. It really doesn't. Because, like, it's meant to go, hey, you're going to be the survivor. Or weed out the people who definitely aren't going to be survivors. Make you anticipate that you're going to be the one that's, these people are gone. But it does do a whole lot of, like, bravado and a whole lot of rah rah, the military's great, rah rah. But internally, it's also like, that's forked up.
And as it goes on, you lose a bit of the gee whiz, look at this high tech, cool tech, look at this awesome battle sequence, and you get more of a, why is this even a project at all? Why are all of these people dying for something that's fairly senseless?
As the series goes on, it gets more and more that way. It gets more and more, hey, I know I'm in the CDF, but I'm not going to defend the CDF.
And it's also become more clear that the whole project of the colonial union is not sustainable. Like, the entire worldview behind the colonial union that everyone had been using to approach the colonization of alien worlds was simply not feasible.
And so I think it's interesting to see people try to tell me that it's not a political, like that Scalzi's work isn't political, when so much of it is inherently political. Again, it might not come off as partisan right away, but I sent you a page of stuff that is explicitly anti-racist discussion about, what is it, the misattributed quote about "may you live in interesting times," to make it sound better, was said to be an old Chinese, proverb thing?
A curse.
A curse. Okay, that's what it was. And it definitely isn't from China. It definitely isn't something that, like, it was almost certainly made up by American people who just wanted it to sound more mystical. And the character is explicitly like,
Gosh darn.
racists. And again, I'm not saying you have to read everything with a critical eye. In fact, actually, sometimes it's really fun to have a fluffy book. But there's always a point of view. There's always a worldview. There's always something there. And it's interesting to see other people's interpretations. And for the most part, I'm not saying that, like, if it doesn't match with my interpretation, you're wrong. But if you have to ignore most of the, not even subtext, text, to make it squish into your interpretation, maybe you need to be a little less gung-ho about arguing with other people about it.
The thing that I find most valuable is, reading something and trying to understand what they're getting at, even if it is not something that you strictly agree with. And then from there, figuring out what you can learn from it. Are there points that are valid? Are there points that aren't? Are they making some assumptions that you think are unmerited? Is there something that they're missing altogether? But I think you have to at least try and understand it on its merits and on what they're saying. And if you have a piece of art that you disagree with politically, but is otherwise competently done and you can enjoy it on that level, it's okay to enjoy it on that level. You don't have to say, well, because I disagree with this and it's wrong politically, I am a bad person for taking any kind of pleasure in it.
Yes, but at the same time, I don't think you should deny the reality of what it is.
Exactly. You have to be able to acknowledge that there are things about it that don't work.
Or that don't mesh with your worldview.
Exactly.
So, again, with my Star Trek example, and this is the last thing I'm going to say before we get back to actually what we're actually talking about. You can enjoy space battle TV and space opera, and you can enjoy the storytelling and just the things that bring you pleasure from Star Trek. Just don't try to convince other people that it has suddenly become woke or that it never has been like left leaning, or like don't try to tell people that it is something it isn't.
Yes, that's probably the best way to put it.
Enjoy what you enjoy. Confuse the crap out of people who are like, how do you not see this? Sure. But do not try to convince those of us who are paying attention that it is something it isn't.
Yep.
Now, to go back to our actual story, we, as lovely podcast hosts, have left you on a bit of a, but I want to read it more, because Fern hands Viv another book and says, I'd like to have a conversation with you about this one. I think it will surprise you. End of chapter, end of our section for the current episode. So that brings us to, I believe, our notable quotables out of order.
It is notable quotables. All right, so I've got a couple here. She supposed clunking around on one leg tended to dull one's fearsomeness. I've got, then I'll take in the sights. See you in 10 minutes then. Then I've got, child, if you want to roll the bones on gangrene, then I'll be on my way, out into the weather. Again. Otherwise, I'll kindly ask you to limp your way up those stairs. Yes? I hesitate to make the suggestion because it will be very annoying if you misbehave and I have to saw your leg off.
I really like the Doctor.
He's a delight.
It does a lot remind me of just the dry humor from Bones, speaking of Star Trek.
Then this is the last one. This is the one that I actually really like. I'm getting the feeling this book doesn't have as many swords as I was expecting. So, yeah, I like that one a lot. And I think this is a good way to actually segue into the next bit, which is what we learned this week.
All right, two things. This isn't going to be very enlightening. I could have looked up more information about why this happens. I'm just going to tell you the thing I learned, and it's about my own self. So, a little bit of backstory is that when I was a kid, I had swimmer's ear a lot, and I had to be put on antibiotics a lot. And for the most part, up until I was like 15 years old, they put me on amoxicillin. Cool. No problems. Got rid of the ear infection. We're good. That was decades ago. I haven't had amoxicillin since. Got my oral surgery, and they're like, antibiotic, amoxicillin. And I'm like, okay, cool. Great. I am fully on board with the once you start taking it, you gotta get through it unless there is something drastically wrong. And I have had some weirdness with antibiotics over the last few years. One of them made me have absolutely horrible death anxiety, and one of them gave me ocular migraines. This one has made my arm itch for the last 2 days. I apparently, and what I have learned, have an allergy to a medication that I didn't have an allergy to decades ago. I developed it over the course of my life. To have a thing I learned that was not quite so, I don't know, depressing. I also have learned the main progression for the song Nutshell, which I guess is also kind of depressing, except for the fact that I've learned a song, but the song itself is kind of depressing, uh, by Alice in Chains. And I've learned how to do the strumming pattern, which I'm very proud of myself for.
As well you should be.
Thank you.
So with that, it's time for me to do Thing of the Week. So as we're recording this, it's the first weekend of autumn.
No, it isn't.
No, it is the first weekend of November. Sorry. And we have just had the switch to Pacific Standard Time here in the Pacific Northwest.
Confusing the crap out of our cat, who is like, but food.
And so that means that the air is a little crisper, the days are a little shorter, and the light's a little thinner. The leaves are changing from green to yellow and orange and red, and it's a great time to get into a cozier mindset. And so this is a fairly simple thing. First, you got to have a cozy blanket. Doesn't have to be an expensive one, just a cozy one. You want something soft and warm that you can curl up under. Next, you're going to need a good reading spot. It doesn't have to be an Eames chair or whatever. It can be just a cozy spot in your house that you like to curl up. It could be a beanbag chair for all we care about. So long as you like it and it's comfy and cozy, that works.
Beanbag chairs are wonderful. I slept in ours while you were a snot monster all week.
This is true. Next, you're going to want a warm beverage of your choice. It could be coffee or tea or hot cocoa. It doesn't really matter. It just has to be something you like. And then now that you've got the essentials, here's the important part. You have to give yourself time to unplug from the world around you.
Put your phone away?
Yep. All of the notifications, news bits, and emails, and text messages, and direct messages.
TikTok, Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah, Twitter, and all that stuff. They'll be there when you get back.
YouTube. All of the things that just create noise in your space.
Yeah. So set aside this time to just do something else. That could be reading, it could be crafting, it could be just sitting and thinking, it could be listening to music,
meditation.
It could be, hell, it could just be napping. All of these are valid things, but they have to be things that you are choosing to do.
I'm going to add something to your list.
Mm.
Cozy footwear.
Oh yeah, that does help a lot.
Cozy footwear, potentially an oversized sweater.
Yep.
If you're like me, you can also have like a hood that comes up over your head and neck. If you want to curl up with a stuffed animal, no shame in that.
Yeah, this is about you.
Curl up with a real animal.
If they'll let you.
Or if they're in the mood to not be an absolute unholy terror.
Yeah, you can't force that part.
No.
But point being, give yourself this time to do something intentional. Because, like I say, the outside world will be there when you're done with it. And there's an awful lot of noise and very little signal in all of that. By taking this time to do your own thing and to do something intentional and cozy, it allows you to look a little more intently for the actual signal within all of that and find the things that you can respond to productively. Not everything that you are notified about needs a response from you. Not everything that is going on in the world is going to be stuff that's in your sphere of control that you can do anything about. It's not to say that you shouldn't be concerned, but it may be outside of your ability to affect directly. So look for those things that you can control, that you can respond to, and respond to in a way that makes a positive difference. And then you can actually move forward in your life, and you can actually make some positive changes for other people as well.
So the recommended thing is to find some quiet.
Yes, find some cozy, find some warmth. Do something that renews you.
Also, gotta say, there is no shame and there's actually a lot of pleasure to be found in falling asleep while reading, as long as you aren't reading one of those books that is thicker than my wrist and trying to hold it above your head, and it just whacks you in the face.
Well, that's a physics problem.
Also, tablets. If you read it on an ebook of some sort and it whacks you in the face. I may be speaking from experience. I may accidentally thwack myself in the face with a book more often than I'd like to admit.
I've seen it a few times. Well, with that, I'd like to thank you for potting with me.
Real quick before we do that, I've also fallen asleep with my hand in the book. I have also done the thing where I'm like, I fell asleep. I gotta go read. Okay, now where was I on the book? I want to read it. I just try it again. Oh, come on. I am 4 paragraphs from the end of this chapter. I want to read it.
At that point, I think you just bite the bullet, put the bookmark in, and close it up.
Which is what I did last night.
Probably a smart play.
I will say also that I have fallen asleep with my light on more often in the year that we have started reading more often.
Yeah.
What do you mean it's 3 a.m? I should turn that off.
You won't.
Oh, I will sometimes.
Well, with that, I'd like to thank you for potting with me.
Thank you for potting with me.
And thanks for listening to Tales from the Waystone. Join us next time as we continue the summer reading program series with chapters 6 through 11 of Bookshops and Bonedust.
We would like to thank our friend Shawnee Jang for our theme music.
And many thanks to Travis Baldree for creating this world that we're enjoying exploring.
And also another reminder, his next book either is just coming out or has just come out. If you're enjoying this, I know we're going to go pick that book up. Let us know if you'd like us to cover that book maybe next autumn. I want to give it a little bit of time to be out in the world before we just give away the plot.
That's fair.
All right, back on track. Audio production and editing, courtesy of me, Phoenix McCullough.
And writing and project management, courtesy of me, Will McCullough.
If you would like to help support us and have the means to do so, which no pressure, because seriously, if you don't, we have Patreon, patreon.com/waystonepod. If you just want to have a fun little conversation and or troll us about our dislike for cherries and or raspberries, or, torture us with a smoothie made of both, come join us on our Discord.
Link is in the show description.
We would love it if you wanted to have a book discussion with us.
And as always, here's to one more day above the roses.
To one more day above the roses.
Ding!
Blah, 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 blah,
Blip, 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 blip.
blah, blah, blah.